to make compensation and also present a guilt offering. The 6. 1-7. Evidence. If a person was a witness to apostate acts, sedition, murder, which defiled the land, or certain other serious crimes, he was under obligation to report it and to testify to what he knew, or he would be subject to divine curse, publicly proclaimed. The 5. 1. The 13. 8. Compare PR 29. 24. As 6. 2. One witness was not enough to establish a matter, however. 2 or more were required. New 35. 30. To 17. 6. 19. 15. Compare Jo 8. 17, 18. 1-5. 19. Heb 10. 28. Witnesses were commanded by the law to speak the truth. X 20. 16. 23. 7, and were, in some cases, put under oath. Mount 26. 63. This would especially be so when the one on whom suspicion fell was the only witness to the matter. X 22. 10, 11. Since those in a legal case before the judges or at the sanctuary for judgment of a matter were regarded as standing before Jehovah, witnesses were to recognize that they were accountable to God. X 22. 8. The 1. 17. 19. 17. A witness was not to accept a bribe, allow anyone wicked to persuade him to speak untruthfully, or scheme violence. X 23. 1. 8. He was not to let his testimony be swayed by pressure of a crowd or by the wealth or poverty of those involved in the case. X 23. 2. 3. Even the closest family relationship was not to hold one back from testifying against a wicked violator of the law, such as an apostate or rebellious one. The 13. 6-11. 21. 18-21. Zek 13. 3. One who proved to be a false witness received the punishment that the person accused would have received if found guilty. The 19. 17-21. Witnesses in all capital convictions were required to throw the first stone in the execution of the convicted one. Thus witnesses were enjoined by law to demonstrate their zeal for true, clean worship and for clearing out what was bad in Israel. This would also act as a deterrent to false testimony. It would take a very callous person to make a false accusation, knowing that he had to be the first to act in putting the accused to death. To 17. 7. Material and circumstantial evidence. In case livestock had been entrusted to the care of another, the responsible one could bring in the torn body of an animal that had been killed by a wild beast as evidence, and that would owe text to a acute miritra longo. Legion 235. The matter would not have been taken to Jehovah in this manner, but she would have been adjudged guilty by the judges and stoned to death. New 5. 11-31. Documents. Records, or documents, of various kinds were used. A husband was required to give his wife a certificate of divorce when putting her away. The 24. 1. J 3. 8. Compare ISA 50. 1. Genealogical records were available, as we see particularly in 1 Chronicles. Mention is made of deeds registering the sale of real estate. J 32. 9-11. Many letters were written, some of which may have been retained and may have figured in legal cases. 2 Sir 11. 14. 1 Chi 21. 8-14. 2 Chi 10. 1. NE 2. 7. Jesus' trial. The greatest travesty of justice ever committed was the trial and sentencing of Jesus Christ. Prior to his trial, the chief priests and elder men of the people took counsel together with a view to putting Jesus to death. So the judges were prejudiced and had their minds made up on the verdict before ever the trial took place. Mount 26. 3. For they bribed Judas to betray Jesus to them. Lu 22. 2-6. Because of the wrongness of their actions, they did not arrest him in the temple in the daytime, but they waited until they could act under cover of darkness and then sent a crowd armed with clubs and swords to arrest him in an isolated place outside the city. Luke 22. 52, 53. Jesus was then taken first to the house of Annas, the ex-high priest, who still wielded great authority, his son-in-law Caiaphas being the high priest at the time. Joe 18. 13. There Jesus was questioned and was slapped in the face. Joe 18. 22. Next he was led bound to Caiaphas the high priest. False witnesses were sought by the chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin. Many such witnesses came forward but could not agree on their testimony, except two who twisted Jesus' words recorded at John 2. 19. Mount 26. 59-61. Mr. 14. 56-59. Finally Jesus was put under oath by the high priest and questioned as to whether he was the Christ, the Son of God. When Jesus answered in the affirmative and alluded to the prophecy at Daniel 7. 13, the high priest stripped his garments and called upon the court to find Jesus guilty of blasphemy. This verdict was rendered, and he was sentenced to death. After this they spit in his face and hit him with their fists, taunting him, contrary to the law. Mount 26. 57-68. Luke 22. 66-71. Compared to 25. 1, 2 with Joe 7. 51 and Act 23. 3. After this illegal night trial the Sanhedrin met early in the morning to confirm their judgment and for a consultation. Mr. 15. 1. Jesus was now led, again bound, to the governor's palace, to Pilate, since they said, "It is not lawful for us to kill anyone." Joe 18. 31. Here Jesus was charged with forbidding the paying of taxes to Caesar and with saying that he himself was Christ the King. Blasphemy against the God of the Jews would not have been so serious a charge in the eyes of the Romans, but sedition would. Pilate, after making futile attempts to get Jesus to testify against himself, told the Jews that he found no crime in him. Discovering, however, that Jesus was a Galilean, Pilate was happy to send him to Herod, who had jurisdiction over Galilee. Herod questioned Jesus, hoping to see a sign performed by him, but Jesus refused. Herod then discredited Jesus, making fun of him, and sent him back to Pilate. Luke 23. 1-11. Pilate now tried to release Jesus in harmony with a custom of that time, but the Jews refused, calling for the release of a seditionist and murderer instead. Joe 18. 38-40. Pilate therefore had Jesus scourged, and the soldiers again mistreated him. After this, Pilate brought Jesus outside and tried to get his release, but the Jews insisted. Impale him. Impale him. Finally he issued the order to have Jesus impaled. Mount 27. 15-26. Luke 23. 13-25. Joe 19. 1-16. What laws of God did the Jewish Otextoi acute Miritra Longo have him 236 possessed by many demons? Possibly the chief one of these demons caused this man to say that his name was Legion. The fact that in the 1st century CE Roman legions usually consisted of 6,000 men may give some indication of the large number of demons involved. So fierce were the demon-possessed man and his companion that no one dared to pass the area where they had their dwelling among the tombs. Under demon influence the man who said his name was Legion walked about naked, and day and night he cried aloud and slashed himself with stones. All efforts to bind him, even with fetters and chains, were unsuccessful. Christ Jesus, however, freed this man and his companion from the power of the demons. Thereafter the expelled demons took possession of a herd of swine and caused these to rush over a precipice to their death in the Sea of Galilee. Mount 8. 28-34. Mr. 5. 1-20. Luke 8. 26-39. Seeger Darrens. Swine. For details about the Roman legions, see Army Roman. Habim the middle dot Habim. A name appearing at Genesis 10. 13 and 1 Chronicles 1. 11 among the descendants of Ham through Mizraim. Since the Hebrew name is a plural form, many scholars hold that a tribe taking its name from one of Mizraim's sons is meant. See, however, Mizraim. The Habim are generally identified with the Libyans and at least seem to have constituted one of the tribes inhabiting Libya in ancient times. While identification is difficult, they were probably the same as the Lumidal.vim mentioned elsewhere in the Hebrew text, as at 2 Chronicles 12:3, where the American Standard Version reads Lubim and other translations read Libyans. Mo. N.W. R.S. Lehi high jawbone. The scene of one or, possibly, 2 Israelite victories over the Philistines. Its exact location is unknown today. Some identify it with Kbad Suyag, which perhaps derives its name from the Greek word see gon jawbone, less than 3 kilometers to Me'i of Beth Shemesh. At Lehi, Samson struck down 1,000 Philistines with the moist jawbone of an ass. Subsequently he called the site Ramath Lehi, meaning lofty place of the jawbone, probably to memorialize the victory Jehovah had given him there. JG 15:9-19 Originally, though, Lehi may have got its name from the shape of its crags. Later, according to the rendering of numerous translators, Shema struck down many Philistines assembled at Lehi. 2 Sa 23:11-12. At JB, NW, RS however, the Hebrew term la-middle.chi-middle.ya literally means into the 10th village, and, by a slight change in vowel pointing, is rendered to Lehi. Lamu middle.l belonging to God. An unidentified king of ancient times whose words are recorded in Proverbs chapter 31. His identity has been the subject of considerable discussion, some commentators suggesting that Lemuel was another name for Solomon. Others identify Lemuel with Hezekiah. The words of King Lemuel constitute the weighty message that his mother gave to him in correction. PR 31:1 However, the time and circumstances of the king's reception of such information from his mother are unknown. This weighty message advises against involvement with a bad woman, warns of how intoxicating liquor can pervert judgment, highlights the need to judge righteously, and then describes a good wife. Lentil Heb. Adamiddle.Shah. An annual plant of the legume family that has long been cultivated by man and is still extensively grown in Egypt and Israel, as well as in other lands. 2 Sa 17. 27, 28. 23. 11 This small plant lends esculenta, measuring from 15 to 46 centimeters 6 to 18 inches in height, thrives in light, dry soil. Its compound leaves, generally consisting of 6 pairs of oblong leaflets, terminate in tendrils. Slender branchlets bear 2 to 4 small pelic flowers each. The short pods that develop from the flowers resemble those of the pea, and usually they contain 2 small lens-shaped seeds. The color of the seeds and that of the flowers differs with otextoi acute muritra longo. Leprosy 237 In the scriptures, allusion is made to the swiftness of the leopard Hab 1. 8 And its manner of lying in wait near towns, ready to pounce upon passing domestic animals. J5. 6. Ho 13. 7 In sharp contrast with this, the leopard and the kid are depicted as lying down together in peace during Messiah's rule. Issachar 11. 6. At Daniel 7. 6, the four-winged, four-headed leopard represents the Grecian world power, which conquered Medo-Persia with the swiftness of a leopard. Also, the wild beast out of the sea, seen in vision by the Apostle John, was basically like a leopard. Re 13. 1, 2. Sea beasts, symbolic. The Hebrew word la'ish, otherwise translated lion job 4. 11. PR 30. 30, is rendered leopard at Isaiah 30. 6 NW, the line la middle. 6 already having been mentioned in the same text. Leprosy. A disease designated in the Bible by the Hebrew terms a middle. Rath and the Greek word lepra. A person afflicted with it is called a leper. In the scriptures leprosy is not restricted to the disease known by that name today, for it could affect not only humans but also clothing and houses. But 14. 55 The leprosy of today is otherwise called Hansen's disease, so named because Dr. Gerhard A. Hansen discovered the germ that is generally thought to cause this malady. However, though the middle. Rath applies to more than the leprosy of today, there is no doubt that human leprosy now called Hansen's disease was in evidence in the Middle East in biblical times. Varieties, with their effects. Today leprosy, or Hansen's disease, which is only slightly communicable, manifests itself in three basic varieties. 1. The nodular type results in a thickening of one's skin and the forming of lumps, first in the skin on the face and then on other parts of the body. It also produces degenerative effects in mucous membranes of the victim's nose and throat. This is known as black leprosy. Another type is anesthetic leprosy, sometimes called white leprosy. It is not as severe as black leprosy and basically affects the peripheral nerves. It may manifest itself in skin that is painful to the touch, though it can also result in numbness. The third type of leprosy, a mixed kind, combines the symptoms of both forms just described. As leprosy progresses toward its advanced stage, the swellings that initially develop discharge pus, the hair may fall from one's head and eyebrows, nails may loosen, decay, and fall off. Then the victim's fingers, limbs, nose, or eyes may be slowly eaten away. Finally, in the most serious cases, death ensues. That biblical leprosy certainly included such a serious disease is apparent from Aaron's reference to it as a malady wherein the flesh is half eaten off. New 12. 12. This description helps one better to appreciate biblical references to this dread malady and the dire consequences of Uzziah's presumptuous act in improperly endeavoring to offer incense in Jehovah's temple. 2 Chi 15. 5. 2 Ch 26. 16-23. Diagnosis. By means of the Mosaic Law, Jehovah provided Israel with information enabling the priest to diagnose leprosy and to distinguish between it and other less serious skin afflictions. From what is recorded at Leviticus 13. 1-46, it can be seen that leprosy might begin with an eruption, a scab, a blotch, a boil, or a scar in one's flesh from fire. Sometimes the symptoms were very clear. The hair in the affected area had turned under Messiah's rule, the scriptures foretell. The leopard and the kid will lie down together in peace. Leprosy 238 white, and the malady was seen to be deeper than the skin. For example, a white eruption in the skin might turn the hair white, and raw flesh might appear in the eruption. This meant that one had leprosy and was to be declared unclean. However, in other cases the malady was not deeper than the skin and a period of quarantine was imposed, with subsequent inspection by the priest, who made a final determination in the case. It was acknowledged that leprosy could reach a stage in which it was not contagious. When it overspread the entire body, all of it having turned white, and living flesh was not in evidence, it was a sign that the diseased action was over and that only the marks of its ravages remained. The priest would then declare the victim clean, the disease posing no further danger to anyone. Le 13. 12-17. If the leper's malady left him and he was cured, there were arrangements whereby he could ceremonially purify himself, and these included the offering of sacrifice in his behalf by the priest. Le 14. 1-32 But if the priest declared the uncured leper unclean, the leper's garments were to be torn, his head was to become ungroomed, he was to cover the mustache or upper lip, and he was to call out unclean, unclean. He had to dwell in isolation outside the camp. Le 13. 43-46, a measure that was taken so that the leper would not contaminate those in the midst of whom Jehovah was tenting. New 5. 1-4 It seems that in biblical times lepers associated with one another or lived in groups, making it possible for them to aid one another. 2 Chi 7. 3-5. Lu 17. 12. In garments and houses. Leprosy could also affect woolen or linen garments, or an article of skin. The plague might disappear with washing, and there were arrangements for quarantining the article. But where this yellowish-green or reddish plague persisted, malignant leprosy was present and the article was to be burned. Le 13. 47-59 If yellowish-green or reddish depressions appeared in the wall of a house, the priest imposed a quarantine. It might be necessary to tear out affected stones and have the house scraped off inside, the stones and scraped off mortar being disposed of in an unclean place outside the city. If the plague returned, the house was declared unclean and was pulled down, and the materials were disposed of in an unclean place. But for the house pronounced clean there was an arrangement for purification. Le 14. 33-57 It has been suggested that the leprosy affecting garments or houses was a type of mildew or mold. However, about this there is uncertainty. as a sign. One of the signs Jehovah empowered Moses to perform to prove to the Israelites that God had sent him involved leprosy. As instructed, Moses stuck his hand in the upper fold of his garment, and upon his withdrawing it, his hand was stricken with leprosy like snow. It was restored like the rest of his flesh by his returning it into the upper fold of his garment and withdrawing it once again. X 4. 6, 7 Miriam was stricken with leprosy as white as snow as a divine act, because she spoke against Moses. He begged God to heal her, which was done, but she was quarantined outside the camp for 7 days. New 12. 1, 2, 9-15. In Elisha's time. Naaman the Syrian was a valiant, mighty man, though a leper or struck with skin disease. 2 Kai 5. 1. FTN his pride nearly lost him the opportunity of being cured, but he eventually did as instructed by Elisha, plunging into the Jordan 7 times, and his flesh came back like the flesh of a little boy and he became clean. 2 Kai 5. 14 He thereupon became a worshipper of Jehovah. However, Elisha's attendant Gehazi greedily acquired a gift from Naaman in the prophet's name, thus misrepresenting his master and, in effect, making the undeserved kindness of God a means of material gain. For his misdeed, Gehazi was stricken with leprosy by God and became a leper white as snow. 2 Kai 5. 20-27. O textoi acute miritra longo, leveling instrument 239, and fell upon his face at Jesus' feet, thanking him for what had been done in his behalf. Lu 17. 11-19 It may also be noted that Christ was in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper whom Jesus may have cured when Mary anointed Jesus with costly perfumed oil a few days before his death. Mount 26. 6-13. Mr. 14. 3-9. Joe 12. 1-8. Leshem. Alternate name for the city of Lish, later called Dan. Joe's 19. 47. JG 18. 7, 27, 29. See Dan no. 3. Leshem stone Leshem. An unidentified precious stone that was placed first in the third row of gems on the high priest's breastpiece of judgment. X 28. 15, 19. 39. 12. Various stones, such as amber, hyacinth, opal, and tourmaline, have been suggested as being identical with Leshem stone, but none of these identifications can be substantiated. The New World Translation therefore leaves the Hebrew word untranslated as Leshem stone. Letters. The writing and sending of official, business, and personal letters was a widely used means of communication in ancient times. 2 Sir 11. 14. 2 Kai 5. 5-7. 10. 1, 2. 2 Ch 30. 1. Es 4. 7. Issa 37. 14. J 29. 1. Act 9. 1, 2. 28. 21. 2th 2. Heb 13. 22. The Hebrew words for refers to anything that is written and has the various meanings book, letter, writing, certificate, deed, written document. The Greek word gramma can denote a letter of the alphabet or a written document. 2 Co 3. 7. Act 28. 21 The Greek term e-sto is used only with regard to a written message. 1 Co 5. 9. Confidential letters were usually sealed. 1 Kai 21. 8 Sanballat's disrespectful action in sending an open letter to Nehemiah may have been intended to cause the false charges set forth therein to become public knowledge. Ne 6. 5. In addition to papyrus, materials employed for letter writing in ancient times included ostraca, small pieces of broken pottery or earthenware, and clay tablets. Thousands of clay tablets have been found in Babylonia and other regions. Washed and cleaned, smooth clay was made into a tablet and, while still wet, it was imprinted by means of a stylus forming wedge-shaped cuneiform characters. These tablets were often enclosed in clay envelopes. In the case of contracts, the text was sometimes repeated on the envelope. The envelopes were sealed and then baked in a kiln or dried in the sun to make them hard and durable. See archaeology. Letter writing was often done by professional scribes. As in the Persian court, such scribes were usually on hand to take down official government correspondence. As 8. 9. As 4. 8 scribes were also to be found in the marketplaces near city gates, where they could be engaged by the populace to write letters and to record business transactions. Letters were sometimes delivered by messengers to K 19. 14. Runners to ch 30. 6. Or couriers as 3. 13. 8. 14. Postal service itself seems to have been restricted to official correspondence down to Roman times. So average persons had to rely on traveling acquaintances or merchants to deliver their letters. Anciently, letters of recommendation were also used. However, the Apostle Paul did not need such letters to or from the Christians at Corinth to prove that he was a minister. He had helped them to become Christians and therefore could say, "You yourselves are our letter, inscribed on our hearts, and known and being read by all mankind." 2 Co 3. 1-3. In the 1st century CE, letters from Paul, James, Peter, John, Jude, and the governing body in Jerusalem contributed to the growth and the preservation of the unity and cleanness of the Christian congregation. Acts 15. 22-31. 16. 4, 5. 2 Co 7. 8, 9. 10. 8-11. Letushim la middle dot ushim, possibly from a root meaning sharpen. Hammer. Forge. A name appearing among the descendants of Abraham and Keturah through Dedan. GE 25. 3. This name has the plural Hebrew ending im, as do the names as Shurim and Loamim appearing in the same O-text acute Muritra Longo, Levi 240. Ancient times to achieve horizontal accuracy when building walls in various structures, while the plummet was used to assure vertical accuracy. Egyptian masons seem to have employed a level shaped like the letter A with a short plumb line suspended from the apex. Evidently, when the hanging line coincided with the center mark on the crossbar, this indicated that the surface on which it was placed was level. The scriptures furnish no description of leveling instruments, however, and they refer to this device only in figurative ways. A leveling instrument may be used to construct a building properly or to test its fitness for preservation. Jehovah foretold that he would apply to wayward Jerusalem the measuring line applied to Samaria and also the leveling instrument applied to the house of Ahab. God had measured and found Samaria and the house of King Ahab to be morally bad or crooked, resulting in their destruction. Likewise, God would judge Jerusalem and its rulers, exposing their wickedness and bringing about the destruction of that city. These events actually occurred in 607 BCE to Car 21. 10-13. 10. 11 through Isaiah. The various wicked braggarts and rulers of the people in Jerusalem were apprised of their coming calamity and of Jehovah's declaration. I will make justice the measuring line and righteousness the leveling instrument. The standards of true justice and genuine righteousness would reveal who were really God's servants and who were not, resulting in either preservation or destruction. Isla 28. 14-19. Levi la 6 adherents. Joint. 1. Jacob's third son by his wife Leah, born in Paddan Aram. GE 35. 23, 26. At his birth Leah said, "Now this time my husband will join himself to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." The boy was therefore called Levi, the meaning of this name evidently being linked with Leah's hope for a new bond of affection between her and Jacob. GE 29. 34. Levi became the father of Gershon, Gershom, Kohath, and Merari, founders of the 3 principal divisions of the Levites. GE 46. 11. 1 ch 6. 1, 16. Levi, along with his brother Simeon, took drastic action against the defilers of their sister Dinah. GE 34. 25, 26, 31. This expression of violent anger was cursed by Jacob, who foretold that Levi's descendants would be scattered in Israel, a prophecy that was fulfilled when the Levites were indeed scattered throughout 48 Levite cities in the territories of Israel's various tribes in the land of Canaan. GE 49. 7. Jos 21. 41 Levi accompanied Jacob into Egypt and died there at 137 years of age. X1. 1, 2. 6. 16. See Levites. 2. An ancestor of Jesus Christ, who is referred to as the son of Simeon in the genealogy of Jesus recorded by Luke. He is listed in the line between David and Zerubbabel. Luke 3. 27-31. 3. The son of Melchi, who is the second person preceding Holy Mary's father in Luke's genealogy of Jesus. Luke 3. 23, 24. 4. A tax collector Mr. 2. 14. Luke 5. 27, 29 who became an apostle of Jesus Christ and was otherwise known as Matthew. Mount 9. 9. 10. 2-4. See Matthew. Leviathan Heb. Lu middle.ya. This Hebrew word occurs 6 times in the Bible. It is believed to come from a root word meaning wreath. Hence the name indicates something that is wreathed, or gathered into folds. The word is transliterated in most Bible translations. Since, with the exception of Job 3. 8, the references mention water in connection with it, Leviathan appears to signify some form of aquatic creature of great proportions and strength, although not necessarily of one specific kind. Psalm 104. 25, 26 describes it as cavorting in the sea where ships travel, and for this reason many suggest that the term here applies to some type of whale. Though whales are rare in the Mediterranean, they are not unknown there, and parts of 2 whale skeletons can be found in a museum at Beirut in Lebanon. An American translation here says crocodile instead of textoe acute muritra longo, Levites 241 the Nile canals. Also as 32. 2. Isaiah 27. 1 apparently employs Leviathan LXX, the dragon as a symbol of an empire, an organization that is international in scope and that is dominated by one who himself is referred to as serpent and dragon. Re 12. 9 the prophecy is one of restoration for Israel, and therefore Jehovah's turning attention to Leviathan must include Babylon. However, verses 12 and 13 consider Assyria and Egypt as well. So, Leviathan here evidently refers to an international organization or empire that is in opposition to Jehovah and his worshippers. Levirate marriage. See brother-in-law marriage. Levite cities. The Levites were given no territorial allotment, Jehovah being their inheritance. New 18. 20. 18. 1, 2 But God directed that the other tribes of Israel give them a total of 48 cities and surrounding pasture grounds. New 35. 1-8 Such cities were ultimately assigned to the Levites. Jos 21. 1-8, and 13 of them were priestly cities. Jos 21. 19. See priests' cities. Of the 48 cities, 6 were assigned as cities of refuge for unintentional manslayers. Jos 20. 7-9. See cities of refuge. The scattering of the Levites among the other tribes of Israel was in fulfillment of Jacob's deathbed prophecy. GE 49. 5-7. The Levites had the right to repurchase at any time houses they sold within their cities, or these were restored to them during the Jubilee year. But the pasture lands adjacent to their cities were never to be sold. La 25. 32-34. See Levites. Levites of belonging to Levi. Descendants of Levi, third son of Jacob by Leah. GE 29. 32-34 At times the term applies to the whole tribe, but usually it excludes the priestly family of Aaron. Jos 14. 3, 4. 21. 1-3. Thus the expression priests and Levites is common. 1 Chi 8. 4. 1 Ch 23. 2. As 1. 5. Jo 1. 19 Priestly duties were confined to the male members of Aaron's family, with the Levites, the rest of the tribe, acting as their assistants. New 3. 6-10 This arrangement began with the setting up of the tabernacle, as before this no particular family or tribe was assigned to offer the sacrifices. Acts 24. 5. Taken as a ransom for firstborn. The Levites were chosen by Jehovah in place of all the firstborn of the other tribes. Acts 13. 1, 2, 11-16. New 3. 41 Counting from a month old upward, there were 22,000 Levite males who could be exchanged for the same number of firstborn males of the other tribes. The census taken in the wilderness of Sinai revealed that there were 22,273 firstborn sons in the other tribes. Therefore, God required that a ransom price of 5 shekels $11 be given to Aaron and his sons for each of the 273 firstborn in excess of Levites. New 3. 39, 43, 46-51. Duties. The Levites were made up of 3 families, from Levi's sons Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. G 46. 11. 1ch6. 1, 16 Each of these families was assigned a place near the tabernacle in the wilderness. The Kohathite family of Aaron camped in front of the tabernacle to the east. The other Kohathites camped on the south side, the Gershonites on the west, and the Merarites on the north. New 3. 23, 29, 35, 38 Setting up, dismantling, and carrying the tabernacle was the work of the Levites. When it was time to move, Aaron and his sons took down the curtain dividing the holy from the most holy and covered the ark of the testimony, the altars, and other sacred furniture and utensils. The Kohathites then carried these things. The Gershonites transported the tent cloths, coverings, screens, courtyard hangings, and tent cords, evidently the cords of the tabernacle itself, and the Merarites took care of the panel frames, pillars, socket pedestals, tent pins and cords of the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle. New 1. 50, 51. 3. 25, 26, 30, 31, 36, 37. 4. 4-33. 7. 5-9. The work of the Levites was highly organized under David, who appointed supervisors, officers, judges, gatekeepers, and treasurers. O textoi acute muritra longo. Leviticus 242 Maintenance. Maintenance of the Levites was mainly by tithes from the other tribes, a tenth of everything produced from the ground and the cattle being given them. The Levites, in turn, passed on a tenth of this to the priests. New 18. 25-29. 2ch 31. 4-8. NE 10. 38, 39 Also, though the Levites were exempt from military service, they, along with the priests, shared some of the spoils of battle. New 1. 45-49. 31. 25-31. See tithe. The Levites received no territorial allotment in Canaan, Jehovah being their share. New 18. 20 However, other tribes of Israel gave them a total of 48 cities scattered throughout the Promised Land. New 35. 1-8. Provided supporters of true worship. The Levites supplied some notable examples of enthusiasm for true worship. This was evident in the golden calf incident and again when Levites moved out of Jeroboam's territory following the split in the kingdom. Acts 32. 26. 2ch 11. 13, 14 They were also zealous in their support of kings Jehoshaphat, Hezekiah, and Josiah as well as of governors Zerubbabel and Nehemiah and the priest scribe Ezra in their efforts to restore true worship in Israel. 2ch 17. 7-9. 29. 12-17. 30. 21, 22. 34. 12, 13. As 10. 15. NE 9. 4, 5, 38. As a tribe, however, they did not support the Son of God in his work of restoration, although some individual Levites became Christians. Act 4. 36, 37 Many of the Levite priests became obedient to the faith. Acts 6. 7. With the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple in 70 CE, the family records of the Levites were lost or destroyed, bringing the Levitical system to an end. But a tribe of Levi constitutes part of spiritual Israel. Re 7. 4:7. The name of the tribe is also the basis for the name of the Bible book Leviticus. This book deals extensively with the Levites and their duties. Leviticus, the third book of the Pentateuch, containing laws from God on sacrifices, purity, and other matters connected with Jehovah's worship. The Levitical priesthood, carrying out its instructions, rendered sacred service in a typical representation and a shadow of the heavenly things. Hajj 8. 3-5. 10. 1. Period covered. Not more than a month is covered by the events given in the book. Most of Leviticus is devoted to listing Jehovah's ordinances rather than recounting various happenings over an extended period of time. The tabernacle's erection on the first day of the first month in the second year of Israel's departure from Egypt is mentioned in the final chapter of Exodus, the book preceding Leviticus. X 40. 17. Then, the book of Numbers immediately following the Leviticus account in its first verses 1:3 begins with God's command to take a census, stated to Moses on the first day of the second month in the second year of their coming out of the land of Egypt. When and where written. The logical time for the writing of the book would be 1512 BCE at Sinai in the wilderness. Testifying that Leviticus was indeed written in the wilderness are its references that reflect camp life. Before 21. 10. 4, 5. 14. 8. 17. 1-5. Writer. All the foregoing evidence likewise helps to identify the writer as Moses. He received the information from Jehovah 26. 46, and the book's closing words are: These are the commandments that Jehovah gave Moses as commands to the sons of Israel in Mount Sinai. 27. 34. Besides, Leviticus is a part of the Pentateuch, the writer of which is generally acknowledged to be Moses. Not only does the opening and of Leviticus indicate its connection with Exodus, and therefore with the rest of the Pentateuch, but the way in which Jesus Christ and the writers of the Christian scriptures refer to it shows that they knew it to be the writing of Moses and an unquestionable part of the Pentateuch. For example, see Christ's reference to Leviticus 14. 1-32 Mount 8. 2-4, Luke's reference to Leviticus 12. 2-4, 8 Luke 2. 22-24, and Paul's paraphrasing O texto e acute miritra longo, Leviticus 243 through the sanitary and dietary laws, as well as the regulations on sexual morality. They were provided with safeguards against disease and depravity. The chaps 11-15, 18 especially, however, did these laws benefit them spiritually, because they enabled them to get acquainted with Jehovah's holy and righteous ways, and they helped them to conform to his ways. 11:44 Furthermore, the regulations set out in this portion of the Bible, as part of the law, served as a tutor leading believing ones to Jesus Christ, God's great high priest and the one foreshadowed by the countless sacrifices offered in accord with the law. 3. 19-24. Hajj 7. 26-28. 9. 11-14. 10. 1-10. The book of Leviticus continues to be of great value to all today who desire to serve Jehovah acceptably. A study of the fulfillment of its various features in connection with Jesus Christ, the ransom sacrifice, and the Christian congregation is indeed faith-strengthening. While it is true that Christians are not under the law covenant, Hajj 7. 11, 12, 19. 8. 13. 10. 1. The regulations set out in the book of Leviticus give them insight into God's viewpoint on matters. The book is, therefore, not a mere accounting of dry, inapplicable details, but a live source of information. By getting a knowledge of how God views various matters, some of which are not specifically covered in the Christian God's laws, especially concerning the service of the priests in Israel, with emphases, for the benefit of the nation as a whole, on the seriousness of sin and the importance of being holy, because Jehovah is holy, written by Moses in 1512 BCE, while Israel was camped at Mount Sinai. Aaronic priesthood is installed and begins to function. Moses carries out the 7-day installation procedure. 1-36 On the 8th day, the priesthood begins to function. Jehovah manifests his approval by displaying his glory and consuming the offering on the altar. 1-24 Jehovah strikes down Nadab and Abihu for offering illegitimate fire. Subsequently, the use of alcoholic drinks, when one is serving at the sanctuary, is forbidden. 1-11 Requirements are outlined for those who will serve as priests. Regulations are laid down about eating what is holy. 21. 1. 22. 16 Use of sacrifices in maintaining an approved relationship with God. Laws are given regarding animals acceptable as burnt offerings and how they should be prepared for presentation. 1-17. 6. 8-13. 7. 8 kinds of grain offerings are stipulated, as well as how they are to be presented to Jehovah. 2. 1-16. 6. 14-18. 7. 9, 10 Procedure is laid down for handling communion sacrifices. The eating of blood and fat is forbidden. 3. 1-17. 7. 11-36 Animals are specified for sin offering in the case of a priest, the assembly of Israel, a chieftain, or one of the people. Procedure for handling this offering is outlined. 4. 1-35. 6. 24-30 Laws are given on situations requiring guilt offerings. 5. 1. 6. 7. 7. 1-7 Instructions are handed down regarding the offering to be made on the day of the priest's being anointed. 6. 19-23 All offerings must be sound. Defects making an animal unfit for sacrifice are listed. 22. 17-33 Atonement Day procedures are outlined involving the sacrifice of a bull and 2 goats. 1 goat for Jehovah and the other for Azazel. 16. 2-34 Detailed regulations to safeguard against uncleanness and to maintain holiness. Certain animals are acceptable as clean for food and others are prohibited as unclean. Uncleanness results from contact with dead bodies. 11. 1-47 A woman should be purified from her uncleanness after giving birth. 12. 1-8 Procedures for handling cases of leprosy are detailed. 13. 1. 14. 57 Uncleanness results from sexual discharges, and purification is required. 15. 1-33 Holiness must be maintained by respecting sanctity of blood and by shunning otex toi acute muritra longo. Liberty 244 Greek Scriptures, the Christian can be helped to avoid what displeases God and to do what pleases Him. Liberty. See freedom. Jubilee. Libna from a root meaning white. Or, possibly, storax tree. 1. An Israelite wilderness encampment. Its location is unknown. New 33. 20, 21. 2. A royal Canaanite city taken by Joshua before the conquest of Lachish. Jos 10. 29-32. 39. 12. 15 Libnah was one of the cities in the territory of Judah given to the sons of Aaron. Jos 15. 21, 42. 21. 13. 1 ch 6. 57 Centuries later King Josiah's father-in-law lived there. 2 Chi 23. 31. 24. 18. 52. 1. At the time of the Edomite revolt in the 10th century BCE, Libnah also rebelled against Judean King Jehoram. 2 Chi 8. 22. 2 ch 21. 10 In 732 BCE, Assyrian King Sennacherib's army moved from Lachish to Libnah. He had sent a military detachment from Lachish to threaten Jerusalem. While at Libnah, the Assyrians received reports that Tighaker, the king of Ethiopia, intended to fight them. Therefore, Sennacherib, to encourage Jerusalem's surrender, sent messengers a second time with intimidating letters to Hezekiah, the king of Judah. Subsequently, Jehovah's angel slew 185,000 of the Assyrian host, apparently still encamped near Libnah. 2K 19. 8-35. Issa 37. 8-36. Tel es Safi has been suggested as a possible identification of ancient Libna. However, since the weight of evidence points to identifying Tel es Safi with Gath, contemporary scholars tend to identify Libna with Tel Born at Tel Burina, about 8 km 5 mi of Lachish. Libni Libni from a root meaning white. 1. A grandson of Levi and the son of Gershon Gershom. X6. 17. 1ch6. 17 He was the founder of a Levitical family. New 3. 18, 21. 1ch6. 19, 20 and was evidently also called Laden. 1ch23. 6, 7. 26. 21. 2. A Levite who descended from Merari through Mali. 1ch6. 29. Libnites of belonging to Libni. A family of Levites who descended from Gershon through his son Libni. New 3. 21. 26. 58. Libya Libya middle.a, Libyans Libya middle.ans. Ancient Libya occupied an area of northern Africa of Egypt. Its inhabitants are generally thought to have been designated by the Hebrew term Luvim. 2ch12. 3. Libyans, LXX, NW, RSFLU middle.vim is a variant of the middle.vim Lhabim. This may indicate that at least some of the Libyans descended from Ham through Mizraim. GE 10. 13 The traditional Jewish view found in the writings of Josephus Jewish Antiquities, I, 130-132 6, 2 makes the Libyans descendants of Ham through Put. GE 10. 6 Also, the Greek Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate read Libyans in Jeremiah 46. 9, Ezekiel 27. 10, and 38. 5 Where the Hebrew text says Put. It is possible, of course, that descendants of both Put and Mizraim settled in the geographic region of northern Africa that came to be called Libya. This would mean that the designation Libyans is more comprehensive than the Hebrew term Luvim. Egypt's king Shishak, regarded as the founder of the Libyan dynasty, captured numerous cities when he invaded Judah in the 5th year of King Hobom 993 BCE. His powerful force of chariots and horsemen included Libyans. Although Jerusalem itself was spared, Shishak stripped the city of its treasures. 1 Kai 14. 25, 26. 2ch12. 2-9 About 26 years later 967 BCE the Libyans were represented among the troops of Zerah the Ethiopian, which penetrated Judah, but suffered humiliating defeat. 2ch14. 9-13. 16. 8 In the 7th century BCE the assistance of the Libyans and others was seemingly of no avail in saving the Egyptian city of No-Amen from calamity at the hands of the Assyrians. Na 3. 7-10 It was foretold that the Libyans and Ethiopians would be at the steps of the king of the north, implying that these former supporters of Egypt would come under his control. Da 11. 43. In the year 33 CE among the Jews and proselytes at Jerusalem for the festival of Pentecost were persons o textoi acute miritra longo, life 245 something worthless, vain, valueless. PS 12. 2. De 5. 20. PS 60. 11. 89. 47. Z 10. 2 The Hebrew verb committal.chash deceive evidently has the basic meaning prove disappointing. The 19. 11. Ho 9. 2 The Greek term certus and related words have to do with lying and falsehood. The father, or originator, of lying is Satan the devil. Jo 8. 44 His lie conveyed by means of a serpent to the first woman Eve ultimately brought death to her and to her husband Adam. GE 3. 1-5, 16-19 That first lie was rooted in selfishness and wrong desire. It was designed to divert the love and obedience of the first human pair to the liar, who had presented himself as an angel of light, a benefactor. Compare to Co 11. 14. All other malicious lies uttered since that time have likewise been a reflection of selfishness and wrong desire. People have told lies to escape deserved punishment, to profit at the expense of others, and to gain or maintain certain advantages, material rewards, or the praise of man. Especially serious have been the religious lies, as they have endangered the future life of persons deceived by them. Said Jesus Christ. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because you traverse sea and dry land to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one you make him a subject for Gehenna twice as much so as yourselves. Mount 23. 15. The exchange of God's truth for the lie, the falsehood of idolatry, can cause a person to become a practicer of what is degrading and vile. Row 1. 24-32. The case of the religious leaders of Judaism in the time of Jesus' earthly ministry shows what can happen when one abandons the truth. They schemed to have Jesus put to death. Then, when he was resurrected, they bribed the soldiers who had guarded the tomb so they would conceal the truth and spread a lie about the disappearance of Jesus' body. Mount 12. 14. 27. 1, 2, 62-65. 28. 11-15. Mr. 14. 1. Lu 20. 19. Jehovah God cannot lie. New 23. 19. Hope 6. 13-18, and he hates a false tongue. PR 6. 16-19 His law to the Israelites required compensation for injuries resulting from deception or malicious lying. PR 6. 2-7. 19. 11, 12 And a person presenting false testimony was to receive the punishment that he desired to inflict upon another by means of his lies. 19. 15-21 God's view of malicious lying, as reflected in the law, has not changed. Those desiring to gain his approval cannot engage in the practice of lying. PS 5. 6. PR 20. 19. Col 3. 9, 10. 1T3. 11. Re 21. 8, 27. 22. 15 They cannot be living a lie, claiming to love God while hating their brother. 1 Joe 4. 20, 21 For playing false to the Holy Spirit by lying, Ananias and his wife lost their lives. Act 5. 1-11. However, persons who are momentarily overreached in telling a lie do not automatically become guilty of an unforgivable sin. The case of Peter, in denying Jesus 3 times, illustrates that if a person is truly repentant, God will forgive him. Mount 26. 69-75. While malicious lying is definitely condemned in the Bible, this does not mean that a person is under obligation to divulge truthful information to people who are not entitled to it. Jesus Christ counseled, "Do not give what is holy to dogs, neither throw your pearls before swine, that they may never trample them under their feet and turn around and rip you open." Mount 7. 6 That is why Jesus on certain occasions refrained from giving full information or direct answers to certain questions, when doing so could have brought unnecessary harm. Mount 15. 1-6. 21. 23-27. Joe 7. 3-10 Evidently the course of Abraham, Isaac, Rahab, and Elisha in misdirecting or in withholding full facts from non-worshippers of Jehovah must be viewed in the same light. GE 12. 10-19. Chap 20. 26. 1-10. Joes 2. 1-6. Jos 2. 25. 2 Chi 6. 11-23. Jehovah God allows an operation of error to go to persons who prefer falsehood that they may get to believing the lie rather than the good news about Jesus Christ. O textoi acute miritra longo, Life 246, 66. 9. PR 3. 22. Vegetation has life, the life principle operating in it, but not life as a soul. Life in the fullest sense, as applied to intelligent persons, is perfect existence with the right to it. Jehovah God the source. Life has always existed, because Jehovah God is the living God, the fountain of life, and he is no beginning or end of existence. J 10. Dar 6. 20, 26. Jo 6. 57. 2 Co 3. 3. 6. 16. 1 Th 1. 9. 1 T 1. 17. PS 36. 9. J 17.